Vážení priatelia, milí hostia, this lecture is going to happen in English language, and I have a special opportunity to introduce you Mr. Łukasz Gorczyca. Mr. Łukasz Gorczyca is going to speak not only about Raster Gallery. Raster Gallery was, from my point of view, one of the first galleries, or maybe the first gallery in Warsaw I recognized many years ago when we met Łukasz on many international events, and we started some times ago cooperations as well. So Łukasz was presenting artists on a Crazy Curators Biennale in Bratislava. What was, from my point of view, very interesting or special on the Raster Gallery was that it was not a typical example of commercial gallery. Łukasz Gorczyca was, from my point of view, a critic or curator much more than a dealer, and he was always trying to curate his gallery, but not only gallery, but later we will speak also about the website, about the parallel projects, about publication activities. So when I started to participate or visit some international fairs, I met many international galleries which were operating more as dealers. Łukasz started, his background was criticism, and this is something what, for example, ICA, International Association of Art Critics, doesn't accept, that you can't be at the same time art critic and gallerist. Łukasz is somebody who is connecting these two parts of his identity, and I would like to know more how is it possible if you describe yourself more being curator, more art critic, or gallerist, or how is it possible to operate in all these positions together?
Okay. Thank you for this introduction, and thank you for this kind invitation to come here to Bratislava. This is really a pleasure for me to be here again. What to start from? Maybe I should start with saying I'm sorry. But it's possible. I think it's not really possible to combine these two professions, like art critic and the gallerist. And if you ask me in this direct way who I am first, I must say I'm the gallerist. I really try to avoid to describe myself as a curator, because this is the truth. I do curate the shows time to time, also beyond the gallery activity. But I don't really think myself as a trained and well-educated curator. Maybe I'm more like an amateur curator time to time, what I like, actually. But that's true that it's actually maybe also a bit about the specifics of the whole process of transformation of the arts in Poland, that it's still sort of traditional problem with the distinction between the different activities in the field of the contemporary arts. So many people guess that if I'm working in a gallery doing shows, it means I'm curating. But I think nowadays there are completely two different activities and two different professions. Even if, and this is for sure the truth, there is a constant flux of people between one and another field of activities. So there are many curators who became gallerists, and opposite, the same with the criticism. So I used to be a member of ICA as well for some time, but as soon as we started the gallery, I quit, because as you say, that was against the regulation, but also I thought it really doesn't make sense. But then this is yet another thing about this being galleries and writing, because I also do think that it's being galleries doesn't mean that I can't do writing, and I do, but it's not really like art criticism. I mean, even recently I try to spend a bit more time on writing, but it's more into, how do you call it, maybe sort of like a creative writing. I have a column in one of the magazines in Poland, but it's not specifically focused on my gallery practice. It's much more general about not even only about the visual arts, but it's much more about the culture, contemporary culture. So maybe the answer for all these questions is that this is the story of Raster, which is Raster, which is the name taken actually after the name of the magazine we founded with my colleague.
Critical magazine?
I would say that was rather like an art magazine. In the very beginning, it was like an art zine. And we started it together during the studies, and those titled Raster, because we got interested in raster, also in grid, in these little dots, which shape the image of the reality. So we became kind of recognized in the Polish art scene through the magazine, which was pretty funny magazine, I would say. I mean, that was partly the magazine where we can publish our own literature text, our drawings and this kind of stuff, but then it was really much more into the discovering of the contemporary visual art scene. And we've been kind of like a critical, but in a funny way, in terms of language, about the infrastructure of the Polish art system. And we did some strong statements about that. Another thing which was kind of important for Raster as a magazine, that was the fact that in 2000, if I remember correctly, we transformed into paper magazine to online platform, and it operated as a weekly magazine online. And that was the very first this kind of service available in Poland, focused on visual art. And that was something which was for us a very important experience, because that was the very first time we got the feeling that we really do stimulate communication between the people within the art scene. So for some time, for another 2-3 years, this magazine was really active and vivid platform for critical exchange. That was also the time which was kind of important for transformation of the whole scene. It was the moment then the new generation of artists and contemporary art scene became known in the society, but in a bit tricky way, through several so-called scandals or scandalous events or case of censorships. So that was kind of hot moment, because there was the first moment after the transformation, I mean, 10 or 12 years after the historical political break, that the Polish society confronted with the contemporary art, and this process took like about 2, 3, 4 years, which was kind of like a cultural fight or cultural war, I must say. And I think somehow at the very end we won this war, and the contemporary art in all its position and shapes became somehow accepted by the society and by the state. But that was kind of exciting that we could witness this process with Raster, which was kind of also a little critical tool to stimulate the whole process. And that was kind of, at the very end, that was kind of natural for us that we transformed this project into the gallery, because at a certain point, looking for the new artists and looking for the new space for the contemporary art, we thought that we should start kind of like a positive thinking, and we should develop something beyond our critical perspective and to propose something. So that our idea was very basic. We should start with our generation. We should find the artists. We should support the artists our age. They try to describe our social conditions and the way how the world around is changing in using language which will be really adequate to the way how we do perceive the reality. So basically that was very simple. That was looking for sort of like a generation identification.
One of the main missions of the commercial gallery is to support your artist, and the art magazine Flash Art was recognized as a magazine that introduced some very important names to the international market. Can you say that Raster magazine supported the recognition of some young artists?
To a certain extent, maybe yes, but I think it wasn't really the main focus of the magazine, and I think what I said, it's the more important thing was that we did a lot of critical reflection on the way how the institutions are working, how the mainstream media are communicating visual art, how to also, I think, how to change the perspective from the very local one into the more cosmopolitan or maybe more international one. So actually, I think it was much more, for us, it was much more about understanding how it all works. And somehow it was also an important process of mapping the whole scene. Who is who, why it's working like that, what kind of network is behind. But at the same time, what we've been doing, using also very specific type of language, which was kind of partly inspired by the soap opera literature or like a kind of popular newspapers. So it was provocative anyway. I think it was kind of important that this magazine became kind of interface for the younger generation to become art public. So the people who were our age or slightly younger than us, they really follow this website and they really use it as a gate into the visual arts scene. So it was much more about popularization and kind of like a cultural discourse than about like a supporting really particular names. That started with the gallery, I would say.
And you spoke about infrastructure and development of infrastructure. So, because for us, from Slovak point of view, the infrastructure of institutions in Poland, and especially we are thinking about this in the context of Kunsthalle, which is a very new institution in Bratislava. So, can you speak a little bit about this development of institutions?
Yes, sure. I mean, this is very crucial. To make it short, I think like if we took this perspective of this all 25 years, so the first thing what happened, first nothing happened. Then the first move was from the part of the private sector, I would say. So there was first some private initiatives like a private foundation or galleries who started to work in a bit different way, introducing the model of the gallery, for example, or reintroducing, or practically in Poland introducing, because we didn't really have a tradition of the contemporary art market in Poland, because during the communism that was not really possible. But before the war, the society was really conservative, so there were no really dealers working with avant-garde art. There were no private collections for avant-garde art. There were only a few of them public. So then all what started about 2000 was about introducing this model of the gallery or model of the foundation. Then second, so there was the development of the market, and slowly later. And then the second thing was the development of the public sector, which happened also in like which processes in two different ways. So one, there was the reform of all the grant programs and distribution of public money, how to spend it. And so first they started, for example, they reformed all the grants program to open them somehow to the artists and to open them for like kind of professional evaluation. And they also decided to start a special program for collecting contemporary art to support local institutions. But then the second move was actually to reform or to establish new institutions for contemporary art. And then we are now somehow beyond that, I would say. So the institution sector is somehow developed. It's more or less stable, and some of these new museums, they got already proper spaces. Some of them are going to build new buildings. But then there is still like the third step to be taken, which is the slowest one. This is the education. So I think the whole system of the art education is changing pretty slow. Now there are one new art academy in Szczecin, which was founded a couple of years ago, which operates on the more cutting-edge program and also employing good professors. But the rest of these academies, the rest of the schools are changing very, very slowly. So we are somehow in this process. Everything is getting more and more professional, which means also that everything is getting more and more boring. But but then going into details, this is of course a very exciting topic, and so we could discuss it for many hours. But I really think that this question of the institution, the question of the public institutions, is something which really changes a lot. And from my point of view, there are like at least three crucial points. One is the question of the public, because these big institutions, there are finally the institutions that are changing their perspective a bit. So our friends or colleagues who are curators or directors of these institutions, they of course were starting working in the smaller institutions or in the galleries or in the foundations. So they were basically working in a smaller scale, and they were still working, being primarily focused on artist work. And now working for the institution, this is a completely different perspective. The institution is focused on public, and this is all about education and introducing contemporary art to the wider audience. So this is important, of course, because it's also like changed the whole atmosphere and the whole context of our work in the galleries and also the artist's work. But the second thing, which is important, this is what the museums do. This is collecting, and we are lucky now to have sort of like a decent public support for developing the collections of the new museums in Poland. There are 4 museums in Poland at the moment which are specifically focused on contemporary art, and all of them all together, they have from the Ministry of Culture about 1.5 up to 2 million euros spent on acquisitions. So this is decent money. More important thing is that the collections are crucial because on one hand they support the local art scene, they support also younger artists and more cutting edge type of works, which are hardly saleable on the commercial market or gallery market. And then second, which is more important even, I think, the collection is about like developing the context for the work of the local artist. So luckily these collections, all of them are international collections. So they are placing actually the works of international artists together with the works of the local artists. So then this is crucial. This is something what we've been missing for the last 50 years. And that gives us basic hope that finally we can the both of the art histories, there's this white Anglo-Saxon one and the other one, which is like Eastern European, or it's the same with all other ex-peripheral places in the world, can be reworked and then developed together. And then the third thing related to the museums, which is actually, you can say, very formal thing, but this is at the very end, I think, in our position also for the artist practice, very important at the moment. This is the scale, the idea of the space. Because with the institutions, with the bigger institutions, with the new buildings they are opening, there is completely different scales being offered, a different type of space being offered to the artist. And this is a very simple thing, but most of the Polish artists educated in Poland during the last 40, 50, 20, within the last 10 years even, they were trained to work in limited spaces, like just physically limited. And even with the spaces like here in the Kunsthalle, you start to work with the question, how big should be the piece to place in the space. I mean, it sounds silly, but at the very end, that was very interesting to see and to follow the program of these new institutions, new museums, and to see how they are trying to solve it, because they notice it immediately. And actually, there is the lack of works, because the Polish artists are not trained and not experienced to work in the bigger spaces.
But on the other hand, at the beginning, you decided to limit your artist to operate only in extremely small space, in a box, on a shoes box. So this was before you started Raster Gallery?
Yes, that was before. But I mean, yeah, I'm a bit surprised that we are discussing so much this kind of like a boring institutional questions, because like 10 years ago or 15 years ago, we've been generally against this sort of discussion, because this discussion is always about the question, what is possible, what is not possible, and about the limitations. There are political limitations, there are economical limitations, many others. But back then, we are much more about changing the things and being enthusiastic. So, of course, people were like during the whole decade of 90s, they were discussing that there is the middle class still missing, that there is no hope for the art market, there is no future for art, whatever. And there was just psychologically not possible to start with the gallery. So we thought, no, it's only the mental thing, let's just do that. So finally what I make is actually, I bought a new pair of shoes, and I got kind of like a nice shoebox. So I decided, let's start with the gallery in the shoebox. So that was actually quite a nice experience, because that was my very first curated space, I can say. So I invited the young artists to develop projects and to do like regular exhibitions, like in Kunsthalle. And that was actually very beautiful, because the idea was that it's so light, that's so small, that I can walk with that, I can travel with that, I can stick to another shows in the institutions, I can go to the openings with that. So that was very simple, very poetic, but at the same time the most important thing was just this gesture, that it's not about infrastructure really. you know, your infrastructure is a brain. You don't need really the physical space. No, so you know, there are before we started the gallery, there were like one or two, maybe more, I don't remember, projects we did. Like some of them, one of them at least was in one of the public galleries in Zielona Góra. So that was the very first time we've been showing in a public gallery in an institution this emerging group of artists from Kraków, like Wilhelm Sosna, Rafał Bujnowski, and Marcin Maciejowski. So there are the pictures from, I think, January 2000, so 15 years ago. So it's quite interesting to see how much it changed and how it looked back then. There was, of course, the time that we've been quite, and the artists were quite engaged in this kind of rapidly changing visual culture and introducing of commercial culture. So this is kind of nice shift between the gallery show, institution show. We placed the billboard in the gallery, and the artists were painting directly on them, like a painting, the advertisement for their paintings. And this is already the picture from one of the very first shows in our gallery in Raster, which was basically more or less about the same. So there was the project by Rafał Bujnowski, where he was somehow transforming paintings into the everyday goods or regular objects, which can be reproduced, like bricks, wooden planks, blackboard, chalkboard, and so on.
Before you started Raster Gallery, there was already operating Vauxhall Foundation, which was internationally supporting important Polish artists, and they become very successful commercial gallery selling abroad. I remember that you was telling me that the period that Vauxhall Foundation was not selling locally, and this was your decision to operate more in local market. Is it correct what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm not the right person to discuss Vauxhall case, but of course we are friends, and I do remember how it was. So maybe I can tell just very simple anecdote. I mean, this is true. I mean, the Vauxhall Gallery Foundation is actually was founded, I think, 1997. As a kind of body, additional body to support the activity of historical Vauxhall Gallery, which was always a public gallery but very small and operating much more in a format which was much more similar to the private gallery format. However, it was never commercial. So, but then for some reasons, and because of the lack of money in the public sector, they started with the foundation, and actually they got the idea that maybe they can go abroad, maybe they can go to the international art fairs to get some money for their activity in Poland. So actually, this is exactly how it started. So they started to promote some of the artists internationally. It was very successful. They were very successful, but at the same time they were still keeping this idea that they are operating on the international market only to collect money for the foundation operations in Warsaw. So they were only interested to reinvest this money into the production of the artist's work or developing other projects, whatever. So they were operating as a foundation legally, and this is the same up to today, right? So that was the reason they were also not really interested to work commercially in Poland, and also they thought there is no, and they were right, there was no market in Poland. So our idea was from the very beginning slightly different because we didn't have international experience on working internationally, and we didn't have experience even working with such a kind of well-established gallery as a Kunsthalle Gallery. But we've been quite well communicated with the local people through the magazine, through our different activities as partly curators, partly journalists. So we've been much more interested actually to stimulate the situation locally first. So I remember working on the program. That was a kind of obvious thing for us and for everyone between us, that we're gonna work with Wilhelm Sasno, but he already got I think 2 or 3 months before we opened the gallery, he got a show in the old Kunsthalle Gallery. So we met all together with the Kunsthalle Gallery curators, and we agreed, just like as a friends, that they would be responsible for his representation internationally, and we've been responsible for his representation locally. And that was not really the problem. There was never competition between us. So, but then of course it's all developed in a way we never expected. So the international career developed really quickly. The market growth incredibly, and locally it was much smaller. So, so actually, for the whole situation in Poland, actually the development of the international market for the Polish art was the crucial thing. So for us also, like the crucial moment was, for the condition of the gallery, for the success and development of the gallery, crucial moment was when we decided and when we started exhibiting internationally, and we starting to go to the international affairs. And this is the sad truth, or maybe not sad, but the truth about the Polish society and what is really stimulation for the people in Poland. So they are really looking abroad, they are really looking west. So if they notice that there is a certain generation or certain group of the Polish artists, they surprisingly are good doing careers internationally, selling the works, exhibiting in important galleries or institutions internationally. They started to be interested in that. Somehow some of them, they were too late because this international careers and the international market developed really quickly and like technically, like the prices for many artists went up, and for the local collectors that was in Poland, they was just too late to buy their work because they didn't have this kind of money. Now it's slowly changing, but it's interesting that this international market was not only about money, but at the very end it was about it played the role model. So the people in Poland need this sort of stimulation coming from the West. So they need, I don't know, this is kind of like a psychological thing in Poland, that we need first somebody from abroad to tell us that this is good, then we can believe in that.
At the moment we have on display at Kunsthalle Bratislava exhibition procedures for the head Polish art today, and we are exhibiting some artists which are represented by your gallery, which already are internationally recognized, and it's quite important for us from Slovak point of view to study the career of these artists, which come to really certain point of career where we can speak that they are not Polish artists, they are not Central European artists. Maybe I speak about Bujnowski, about Libera, but mainly about Sasnau, who is one of the oldest artists, like not oldest, but your cooperation is running from the beginning of Raster Gallery. Why do you think that the Polish art become accepted by Western art history?
I think there's no one simple answer for that, and I think there are always individual stories behind it. But yeah, maybe there are some general points. I think and this is maybe, sorry, this is maybe honest as well. I think we've been kind of in a good place in the right moment. I mean, I think it happens often that there's certain momentum, and actually, if you take a look at this period at the time, like around 2000, and if you think about, let's say, the major international art fairs, or even the program of the institutions, you will see that was still pretty much occupied by this Western world, right? And most of the galleries, they were the galleries from the Old West, like from States, England, Belgium, France, Germany, and so on, Switzerland. So and actually, I think the Polish galleries, they were one of the very first from the region being present there. And it's at a certain point, it's very simple. If you are the first, you win. And of course, it's not so easy because this is also about the quality of the communication you can provide. But I think we face actually the great curiosity from the part of the art world, and I think people were quite curious all around the world. What is actually going on behind this iron curtain? But that was the lack of language, the lack of communication. So I always say that it's, there's always the question, what kind of language shall we use? For the whole decade of the 90s, there were many Polish and Eastern European curators working on major blockbuster shows of Eastern European art, being presented in the major international institutions. And practically it didn't help any of these names, any of the artists to be rediscovered or being introduced into the international museums. But as soon as the galleries started to do their work in the same way how it works internationally, I mean, from the basic level, that there's small gallery taking a few young artists, going to the fair in Basel, and just presenting, hey, take a look, this is the young artist doing that. Suddenly, it started to work, because there was actually that was the habit, that was the way all the careers are growing still. That you go through the galleries, you go to the fairs, to the small shows, to the smaller institutions, and then you keep climbing. And it's no way that you do it like another way, that you parachute to the museums with the famous curator from the East saying, this is the great artist, look. At least in our case, it didn't work that way. So,
what was then the role of criticism and art critics in this process? Because somehow it's not very easy nowadays to discuss in a Western context our Central European art without mentioning Piotr Piotrowski.
I mean, I think there are maybe there are two different questions. This is also a start to the really longer, deeper discussion. But, okay. One thing is that, I think that the problem of the art criticism is problem being widely discussed nowadays, right? And we are more or less witnessing the down of the profession, I think. And this is almost over, like ICA, this is kind of institutional organization which is pretty romantic, but it has no influence anymore. And there is no art criticism in a sense, we remember it even from the 20th century. There is no space in the magazines anymore for that, almost. I mean, of course, sure, there are still professional magazines, but this is also pretty much influenced by market. So actually this is very sad actually, there is no money in this profession. The magazines are a major media, mainstream media are not independent anymore. So they are not able to pay art writers. So this is one discussion potentially about what happened with that. I'm also maybe not an expert in that. The other question is the Piotr Petrowski case, who, this is also very maybe difficult to talk about him now, especially he just passed away a couple of weeks ago. And he was such a great guy and such an important writer. But honestly, I do think that was very, very important, first of all, for us in the region, what he's doing, because he was trying to develop for us certain tier or certain model we can develop our identity, finally. Because what happened, what I'm describing now, like us trying to answer your question about this development of the, or rather exportation of the Polish art abroad, about the role of the market and all this kind of stories. This is also still this kind of sad perspective that what happened after '89 was that the Soviet bloc fall apart and we became our individual races into the West. So Poland started to run into the West, the same with Czech and Slovaks and Hungarian Romanians and so on. So we somehow were slowly losing this kind of idea of the neighborhood. And actually the guys like Piotrowski, he was the only one possibly who was still thinking about this region, this certain region which has its identity strength, which has a certain history, which has a certain critical potential. And he was really like shaping it for us. And actually we are not working with that, which is pity, I think. I don't know, we can discuss further on that. This is maybe one more thought, which is more related to the market again. Like after this, I don't know, 10 years experience of operating on the international market, I also do think that we should really seriously consider to develop but not even idea, but develop practically sort of regional market. We should really start to work harder, trying to establish links between the galleries, between potentially collectors, institutions, because this sort of like, from my point of view, maybe this is my private perspective, this sort of Central European identity exists. And if we will be not interested to develop this kind of regional identity and to develop this kind of potential, we will be somehow lost in mist, I think. I mean, if you ask me about this success, international success of the Polish art, I can say, okay, yeah, that was a certain slogan, oh, this is the new generation, Polish artists, it's so successful. But then, you know, everything is changing all the time. Then there's China, then there's Latin America. And, you know, it's for many of these artists being discovered 10 years ago, it's already kind of difficult. It's not like, you know, there are still like a hot artist. No, because like this sort of fashion is going somewhere else, then the world is expanding. Extending. So at the very end, it's important, and that's actually something what I learned from one of the galleries from Belgium, is that in a critical moment, when the crisis starts as well, you can trust only on your local people. And actually, I remember also like about 2007, 2008, where it was this kind of breakdown on the market. It was really visible on the international market in Western Europe, in America, not so much in Poland, I think, not so much in Eastern Europe, because the market was not so much developed yet. But then what happened was that actually the collectors, international collectors, somehow took a step back and they stuck to their local galleries. So, for example, we lose many clients from States because they became much more, they cut the risk somehow. So they didn't like to travel so far anymore. They didn't like to spend money on the galleries they like, but they're very, very far. They rather prefer to work with the neighborhood somehow. You know, somehow about like understanding. You feel much safer. If you need to cut some expenses, you just go home.
But on the other hand, you trust local artists as well, because you represent mainly, if I'm not mistaken, Polish artists. There are some Eastern galleries, like Gregor Bednar, for example, which are representing artists from all regions. So what was the reason you was working more with, or strictly with a Polish artist?
The reason was very simple at the very beginning, because this mission of the gallery was to provide the representation for the emerging generation of artists. They didn't have any representation. So both locally and internationally. So for us, that was really a challenge to take them to the international level, also to provide the wider, the better context for their work. And as the Polish artists and this particular generation was really underrepresented internationally, that was obvious. So it started like that, technical thing you can say. And now we are much more interested somehow to develop the gallery, not even the gallery, but maybe to the extent representation also for international artists. So the program of the gallery in terms of exhibitions from the very beginning was international. Of course, I think there was majority of Polish shows, but there was always at least 1 or 2 shows a year, including international artists or foreign artists. And we keep going like that. And we are now also about like extending it, even like doing more like a smaller project of emerging international artists. I think it's changing. We are doing that also because the situation is changing. It's obvious. And now I think actually the situation in Warsaw and in Poland generally is that we really desperately need more exchange. We need to absorb more of international art. We need to stop with this chauvinistic, nationalistic policy of exportation cultural good from Poland and replace it with the policy of exchange, to balance export and import. So without that, we are not really able to develop, and the art will not develop anymore.
Raster Gallery was exhibiting at least Art Basel Miami Beach, Art Basel Hong Kong, Frieze in London and New York, so you become visible on the most important commercial art fairs, but on the other hand you decided to start your own format of Villa Warsaw. And was it a criticism of art fairs, or what was the concept of Villa?
Sort of criticism. I'm trying to get into these pictures related to fairs. Yeah. I mean, there are beginnings. There are pictures from the first in Basel. So, I mean, at the very beginning, we believed that going to the art fairs, we can maintain our identity somehow. So, our gallery was messy and overcrowded with furnitures and people. And we've been doing a lot of also fun events or like social gigs. So we thought we can keep it going to the fairs. So, but then if you go farther and farther and higher, then it's all became the same, like this. That finally you had this kind of little white cube space at the art fair, and you witness this same crowd of people always. So maybe it wasn't like a criticism, but our plan was slightly different than to end up like that. So we thought we should do something else and to somehow to stress the fact that that the format of the art fair is not really the one we found most exciting. Of course, it's useful, it's important for promotion, it's important commercially, not always. So we started to think with our colleagues internationally what to do, how to play with that. And that what we did actually was a very simple idea, somehow against the regulation of the art fairs, that we funded a virtual gallery, the fake gallery. I mean, the gallery which didn't have a space. The gallery which was actually the collaboration of 3 and 4 galleries. We call it the Fair Gallery. And the idea was that the gallery exists only during the art fairs. So we are not applying to the art fair individually as Raster Gallery or GB agency from Paris. We apply as the Fair Gallery from 3 different cities like Paris, Warsaw, Brussels. That was with Jan Mott from Brussels. And instead of like providing regular booths with the desk, with the gallery sitting and selling, telling people about artist work, we employed the curator, like independent curator, to curate the booth. And so we've been waiting what's going to happen. And actually, that was surprising because I didn't expect that it was really, that it will be really looking different. But it did. So this is the picture from the Fris Fair Art Fair 2007, I guess. So there was the exhibition created by the French curator. So the idea was to make sort of like a domestic environment. So the very crucial difference was that there were no dealers present at the booth. Curator was there. We've been around somehow walking, and it's not even visible here. This is this mother with the kid. This is the part of Roman Ondak performance, which was also the part of the booth. And what happened was that was very interesting. That this commercially, this booth and this project was disaster. So it didn't really attract any private collectors, but it attracted a lot of institutional attention. So this, like for example, Sir Nicholas Sirota here on the booth, and actually Tate bought one of the pieces from the booth. So finally, it was not about money, but it was about like doing kind of like a crazy project and kind of expensive PR within the structure of the art fair. So another year was even more radical. So there were ongoing performances. It was the curator, 2008, the curator we invited was Pierre Barblanc, who is now also in the Documenta team. And it even ended up in a nice way. He also invited Rafał Bujnowski, who did the project a couple of years ago, painting the banners for political demonstration in Poland. So the artist was interested just to support the activists and painting the banners for them with their slogan. And then he collected the banners back. They were used for manifestation. He collected the banners back and then stretched them as paintings. And then they were used for this. And Pierre asked us to do our own manifestation with the banners all around the Fris Art Fair tent. And that was very nice because it was stopped by the security and administration of the fair that we've been because it was against the regulation. We've been making unequal competition for other works, or whatever. So that was the project which actually helped us to understand more what kind of alternative we can develop, and also it was very helpful to establish sort of like an intellectual relationship with other galleries to somehow to avoid this pressure of the commercial atmosphere of the art fair. So then there was the Villa project, which was somehow similar. That was the idea of being not particularly against, but being kind of self-reflective and critical in a positive way about the practice of the gallery and the structure of the gallery. So for the Villa project, the idea is very simple, that we do invite the group of about 10 or 12 international galleries, and we go all together to certain city, certain place, which is always chosen by us as a place with a very strong identity, cultural identity, but not necessarily recognized as an art center, not like a major art center. So we avoid Berlin, Paris, London, New York, but we go to Reykjavik, we did Tokyo, and this January we did Toronto. So we are interested actually to connect with the people there. We do a show all together for a week, together with the local galleries, and we always develop the program of meetings, screenings, lectures, performances, concerts. But this is crucial also that we are working together with the local people there. So we go to institutions there, we go to the galleries, we do studio visits, and so on. So this is also the time for us, which is like somehow taken out of this professional calendar. So it's either during the winter time or summertime. So this is the time we have time. We have time to spend time together, to drink together, to think about it, to exchange ideas, and to learn actually what is really important. How do people operate in a similar position as we are? Like in our case, Warsaw, right? That Warsaw has, of course, great big ambitions. We always discuss about Berlin, London, blah blah blah. But of course, the city will never play the role like Berlin does or London. But I think, coming back to the previous question, we can have a chance to operate as a kind of important regional center. But it's also interesting for me, important to work in such a place like Bratislava or Warsaw, and working internationally, but having this, but working hard somehow to stimulate and to develop this local situation. So that's always a very interesting case for us to try to understand how it works in a similar locations like Toronto, which is like 1 hour and a half by flight from New York, which is really like a monster, like consuming everything, and like a vacuum, which really steals all the people and the artists from Toronto. But still, there's like a big interesting scene there, that's somehow shadowed by New York or Tokyo, which is like a great city, huge metropolis. But the contemporary art scene is such a little small thing there, right? So this is also about like understanding what are the possible strategies and how it is to work in a place which is maybe not like the best place for art on the planet, but still the very nice place to live and it's a work of art. So there are some pictures actually here from Toronto. This was a kind of specific thing. Very first time we've been working in a public space. We got the space at the central railway station, which is actually operating railway station. So the show was there. That was kind of nice experience. This is Warsaw. Raster nowadays.
I have very few last questions. One is your website. Your website looked like a magazine. When I was looking to the button available artworks, there was actually nothing there. So are you continuing in your ideas of Raster magazine, that you want to communicate your commercial gallery work through the magazine, or what is behind this concept?
No, I mean, I would send you an offer, full offer of pleasure, of course. I mean, but we try our best to operate professionally as a gallery. But that's very true that we also do think that that somehow we still do have this romantic idea that the gallery is also a bit more than only like a selling point, and especially in the communities like Warsaw or Poland, that there is still a lot to be made in terms of education. And another thing is our own history, right? We started as writers doing magazine, so we still have this. We still like this, doing this sort of like a magazine-like websites or blog based web activity. So yes, that's true. We would like to keep this website as a sort of like a platform where there is like a wider information provided. So we can have a news, we can have a blog, but actually in terms of like the nostalgia for magazine, I think we feed it in a other way.
Editions?
Partly editions. What we think it's this is the part of our space now. This is like a little bookstore which operates as a bookstore, but also like a place we can display, we can produce some editions, which we also treat as sort of more like a kind of tool for education, stimulation, collecting. So yes, we do have an offer of different sort of editions, but then we did some records, okay, but then the books, this is something what we are spending more and more energy recently, which is again partly connected with the gallery program. So we try now to work on the monograph books or the artist books for the artists we cooperate with, which is like kind of more or less obvious thing. But then we have an additional program which are books not necessarily related to the gallery program. And one example is the series of books which are focused on the city of Warsaw, on the architecture or the cultural heritage or the photography related to the history of Warsaw in the 20th century. So there are, I think, 4 titles until nowadays we published, which are something between. The books are something between the academic books. I mean, we are partly bringing academic research, partly this is like bringing the overlooked or forgotten or undiscovered archival materials like photographs, and partly they are just like beautifully produced design books which are much more about nostalgia for this type of craftsmanship. So this is also for the more or less for collectors, for people who still do believe that the book is a still proper tool of communication, physical tool. So this is and this is actually something which I could describe in the easiest way as a hobby, as something what we do for really for like a pure pleasure.
Artists, it's probably the last question. There are many jokes about relation of gallerist and his artist. Slovak art market was influenced by auction houses, which actually started to operate art market here locally. The big problem still in Slovakia are studio sellings, and you was telling me about your romantic ideas of the gallery. And I remember that you originally had no contracts with your artist. You mentioned that you have only gentleman agreement. So what is your relation with your artist? How is it organized now?
We even improved that. We have exclusively gentleman agreements with the artists. We don't have any signed contracts. But it's not like our invention. It's actually how it works everywhere. I mean, at least in case of this, at least at the level we are working. I think it's crucial for this type of work, this type of business, that is all founded on trust. And if you don't really trust each other, it will not work. So of course we know the rules somehow, and we don't need to put it on paper. And actually the paper doesn't change so much the situation for us or for the artists, because there is no single contract you couldn't break. You can work with lawyers, you can do everything. So this is much more founded on trust, on some mutual communication, And it's not really the problem. We never got the problems with like this kind of like a studio sales or something like that. But the reason was that we've been actually the very first gallery for all the artists we work with, or the most of them. So they were happy to work with us. So they didn't like to sell. They didn't know how to do that. So they were not interested to do that. And they understand the gallery is something which helps them. It's not about like that they are losing money on that. No, they are earning money on that actually. And this is simple, but you can also like the studio sales. It's also possible for us. This is all. Everything can be discussed. So there are technical things. I think like a more most important for us is that we do understand the artist well in all possible sense. So at the very end, most of the artists we work with became our friends, which could be very helpful, and it's time to time it's painful as well, because it means that you live together and you share the problems you never share being in a professional relationship, right? So, but this is like it is. This is how we work, and actually, possibly every single galleries will say the same. And this is also the question how it's for us, how it's difficult to take such a decision to represent another artist, because technically it's not a problem. We can invite the artists from Australia or from Slovakia or from wherever we like, and to offer them now that we will work together, and we do. But then we are much more interested in a communication, the process that there will be win-win situation, that we can learn something from the artist. Artists can develop thanks to us, and then we can talk together. That we can. And then we can understand his work. Technically, I couldn't imagine the situation that I exhibit the artist. I'm not really able to write the press release myself. And there are many galleries around the world. They are not really making the press release themselves because they don't understand or they don't know how to make it. So they employ curator, or they ask the artist to do that, or they ask the primary gallery to provide the press release, or the artist ask another gallery to make the text for him, right? So we do prefer to work kind of in a closer mental relationship. If it's the answer for your question.
Thank you very much. What do you think about exhibition upstairs? You have seen the Polish variant in Museum of Modern Art in Warsaw. You can be critical now as well.
Okay, I will tell something honest. This is somehow related to the question we discussed before. This is the question of the infrastructure somehow. The Museum of Modern Art in Warsaw, who co-produced the show with you, was, I think, founded in 2007 or something like that, and it's operating the space and developing the collection since maybe 2009 or 10, and it's fast going. And that was very interesting for me, actually, to notice at a certain point that, of course we know all each other because we are the same generation, and we somehow share, maybe we even share a similar perspective on art. We saw the same exhibition, we like the same artists somehow, right? And then it's interesting that you see how the museum develops the collection, how these curators, which are really cutting-edge curators, and I really admire them a lot, and I know they are really very professional, and they are very good, and they are very conscious what they are doing. But at the very last point, working for the museum collection, something different happens. that if you go through the collection, and this is the collection of really contemporary art, like the last 10, 15 years, 20, you are surprised how simple it is in terms of the medium. This is paintings, photographs, and sculptures, and eventual videos. Very few installations, very few performances, very few this sort of famous installation we saw and we got excited, every violence and so on. This is kind of surprising. If you go to the exhibition upstairs, you see a very beautiful show, which is actually, I think, very nicely held. And there are many important works. But this is so museum-like. This is incredible. The museum is very young, and the artists are still very young. And the show is looks exactly like the Museum of Modern Art. This is something which is maybe good. Maybe this is the way how museums operate. You know, they have the conservatory department, and but at the very end it's different. I mean, this is at the very end is kind of difficult experience. So that there is no Christoph Bichel, nightmare or mess upstairs. No, there are just pictures on the wall, and actually some sculptures on the floor, and some monitors with videos. So I like the show a lot.
Thank you. This was Łukasz Gorczyca from Raster Gallery, Warsaw. We are not speaking about his colleague, whose name is Michał Kaczyński. They are both of them running this gallery since many years. Now I would like to give microphone to audience if you have some questions, because I had more than 1 hour opportunity to ask many questions to Łukasz Gorczyca. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Łukasz.
If there are any questions, I'm more than happy to answer it, and I will work with the images as well. There's still some of them are funny, so maybe it also will help to ask.
Are there some questions?
Maybe you said everything.
There are two nice pictures, this one and this one. This is, I'm a bit proud about that. 3 years ago, I think, or 4 years ago, we succeeded with all my colleagues in Warsaw to establish sort of association, which is called Warsaw Gallery Weekend, which is basically the event. So every last weekend of September, we do the joint openings in Warsaw, all private galleries and private foundations, which share the same sort of a kind of idea of working in the contemporary art field. So for the promotion of this event, year by year, we've been doing the pictures, all the galleries together on one photograph. And actually this one became kind of popular. And, so this is also something about this, what I mentioned about the professionalization of the art scene, but also about working on to maintain somehow the identity of the gallery, because when you face the growth of the institution and the public institution, and if you face the growth generally, the growth of the cultural life, the growth of festivals, then you notice that you're slowly also losing people in your gallery, because we still do remember the time in the beginning of our careers that the gallery operated not really as a contemporary art gallery, it operated as a meeting point, because there was still in the city lack of the spaces like bars or restaurants for the young people, or run or operated by the young people. So there people were bored and they were coming to the art gallery. They treated this place as a kind of social place. And now everything is getting into its niche. So we are getting much more professional audience, but somehow we are losing also this so-called general public. So we also thought that we should work together also to be visible in the city And also to, what is most important for me is that we've been able to establish network, that we can really cooperate on a certain level, which is, that was in Poland, that was always nightmare. There are people always fighting each other. There's this famous line about Polish people that there are two in Poland. You have two people and three different opinions. So, there is yet two more pictures I may show, which may have like a world premiere, which could be interesting as well. So here.
Sort of recapitulation now.
This is the chart I translated. This is the chart which says, which describes the turnover of the gallery, Raster Gallery, from 2012 to 2014 by clients. So I mean, in the red color you have international clients of the gallery. And the blue color, you have a local market. So this is the proportion, which is like nowadays for us, like about 30% of turnover is international market and 70% is local market. And another one, last one, this is very simple thing. It shows, I think I'm quite happy with that, it's almost ideal. It shows the turnover of the gallery by different media we are selling. So the blue is the painting, the yellow is photography, the green are sculptures, installation, objects, and then there are this, the orange is video, and this brownish is, and the brownish, there are actually works on paper, like a different than photography.
Thank you very much. Please let me show you one picture at the end. We have opening tomorrow, so I would like to invite you to Kunsthalle Lab tomorrow at 6. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much, Łukasz, for your speech, and let's continue in a private discussion. Thank you very much.